So have you ever noticed how slow people in Hawaii walk? I'm not talking about the tourists. I'm talking about your general locals. I'm sure that these will be on the news sometime pretty soon. I can't tell you how many times I walk around downtown in particular and I'm just stuck behind this really slow walker. I mean, I got places I gotta go and I don't mean to be rude, but they're walking kind of slow. Now, it might be a cultural thing. It could be circumstances of our somewhat limited infrastructure. It could even be the footwear. So let's talk about all of these reasons why people in Hawaii walk slow. And yes, I do see the irony in me walking relatively slow as I'm talking about this subject, but I promise, I walk a lot faster than this. For real, I do. Now, Hawaii people walk slow, okay? It's nothing to be ashamed of, it's just kind of how it is, and maybe a lot of it has to do with our culture. I mean, we're a pretty laid back group of people, and so what's the rush, right? The truck is following the police car? Okay. Anyway, and because of this laid back culture, sometimes you don't want to be that guy or that girl who's like, bruh, try hurry up, I gotta go. Because they'll probably be thinking at the same time, where you gotta go? Try to relax, hold on. And part of it may be that local people like to walk together. And this is especially true when you're talking about going out to eat lunch. People will typically go and walk together. As with any group dynamic, you really can only walk as slow or as fast as the slowest person, and so everyone kind of tends to slow down. So even though people in that group may walk faster, it doesn't matter, irrespective of their natural speed or pace, they will just all tend to walk the same speed. And the thing is, if you get caught behind one of these groups, oh man, especially if the sidewalk is not very wide, you're trapped. You're gonna be stuck behind them forever. Now, you could chance them and try and go and run on the road, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just gotta be patient and wait for the next intersection, and then maybe you could go around them. Now, another reason for Hawaii's slow walking may not necessarily be all on the person walking slow. It could be on the infrastructure. Hawaii has surprisingly narrow sidewalks, and I'm not exactly sure why. Like, if you take a look here, you can see that this was probably the original sidewalk, and then they extended it out another maybe 3.5 feet. Because if you go to Waikiki, those sidewalks are fairly wide, and even like here on Beretania, the sidewalk is relatively wide, but if you go more into town, you'll notice that the sidewalks they're pretty tight. Because according to the Federal Highway Administration, sidewalks should be at a minimum of 5 feet, but it's a lot better if they're 6 feet, because 5 feet they determine is the minimum where 2 adults can walk comfortably next to each other. But I'm 100% sure that there are sidewalks here that are definitely not 5 feet. And even Hawaii's own Department of Transportation recommends 6 feet for lanes that are 2 or 4 lanes across. And yet there are some roads that are so tight that it really can barely fit one person. If you got like an auntie with one of those shopping carts, I mean, it gets real tight where you're gonna have to kind of move off towards the side. Now, I'm not sure why the civil engineers never foresaw that perhaps we needed wider sidewalks, especially as downtown became more and more populated. It seems like they just did the minimum width, and in some places just didn't even bother at all. And maybe that was due to the fact that people were smaller back then, but either way, it's sometimes still pretty tight. And I totally get it. Trying to expand some of these sidewalks now would be very costly and very difficult. But I figure if the city was able to do that with the bike lanes, like getting rid of entire lanes off of pretty major streets and converting them into bike lanes, I figure, what's widening the sidewalk by 3 to 4 feet? The last thing I want to mention is footwear, because I think that influences how people walk. In Hawaii, typically people will wear slippers or flip-flops, and that definitely has a direct impact on how people actually walk. And so for short distance walking, I think slippers are totally okay. But the reality is when you're doing a lot longer distance walking, they can be a hindrance. Because as was cited, they said that when you wear slippers or flip-flops, your stride or your gait tends to be shorter and your feet tend to be a lot more shuffly, which I can completely understand. As I mentioned in the previous video, people in Hawaii tend to have a certain Hawaii walk, and because of that, they tend to walk kind of slow. For the Hawaii walk, if you're not sure exactly what I mean, it's where you kind of like drag your feet like with your heels. You kind of like lean up and you kind of rotate your body sort of from side to side. Now I will admit that I am guilty of walking with slippers for long distances. When my son was first born and we would take him out to go to the park, I'd probably walk at least a good 1 to 2 miles in my slippers, and that would be totally okay. I wouldn't recommend that long term, but hey, I grew up in Hawaii. We wear slippers, and that's pretty much what I would wear every single day if I could. Although I do love these Onitsuka tiger shoes, so maybe these shoes plus slippers. Now, if you're a faster walker like me, again, I'm not the tallest person, but I have a quick pace, so I tend to catch up to people who are taller than me. But if you're a faster walker like me, there are some solutions to get around this problem if you're behind slower people. Now, the first way is just to kindly walk up behind them and say, "Oh, excuse me," and hopefully they'll be nice enough to move out of the way and let you walk by. It's a little bit more direct, but it will get you where you gotta go a lot faster. Then there's the more passive-aggressive approach, and that's up to you if you want to use it. I'm guilty of using this one often, but it's where you, as you're approaching that slow walker or that group of people, it's where you kind of drag your feet a little to let them know that you're coming, so you make plenty noise. And then that way, hopefully they'll be like, "Oh, sorry," and then they'll get out of the way and then you can walk by them. Now it gets trickier when they're walking with a group, because one person will have to then tell the rest of the group, "Oh, excuse me," and move out of the way. Meanwhile, hoping everyone is able to get out of the way, and then you're able to walk around them. But that isn't always a guarantee. As you can see, I've thought about this quite a bit. Now, in closing, I can't be the only one who has noticed this in Hawaii. I hope I'm not. Fortunately, I married someone who is a fast walker, and I mean pretty fast walker. She's from Japan, and so, you know, in Japan, they got places to go and people to see, and they're not slowing down for anyone. They will just move and get, you know, they got to get to the train. It's also one of the reasons why I love Japan, because they will just run right through you and around you and over you, and that's just the culture. That's just how it is. And this critique of Hawaii people and their walking speed is not meant to be critical, although it would be nice if people didn't look down at their phones the whole time while holding everyone up. Because I just kind of find it ironic that we have some of the fastest and speediest and impatient drivers I've ever been around, and that's saying a lot when I've driven in states like Colorado, Oregon, and California. Because I'm like, I get it, you want to zoom past everyone at 20 miles over the speed limit and we'll just all get out of your way as you drive past us with your lifted Tacoma. But then as you're walking and you're dragging your feet and looking down at your phone, you won't get out of the way. But that's a whole nother discussion for another video. But all of this to say that people in Hawaii tend to walk slow. And if you are from Hawaii, it's something that you've dealt with and just have to live with. And if you're not from here and you come here, it's something that you'll have to get used to. So thanks for watching, and aloha.